Fantastic. Thank you all so much for joining us. And today is our Combined Authority meeting. Can I take the opportunity to say that we also have a substitute for Ben Still? Simon is taking up the reins for Ben, who is away. And also, could I also welcome Nikki Diol to her first CA meeting as our new Assistant Director for Legal Governance and Compliance. You join us from Leeds City Council. I'm sorry we've stolen her, James, where she was Head of Legal Services and brings a wealth of experience. Nikki, for the years ahead as we continue to grow and strengthen our governance and deliver for the people of West Yorkshire. So today, let's get on with the business. Miles, can you confirm any apologies, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Denise Jeffrey, Kilburn, attending as their substitutes respectively.
I wonder, Miles, if you could just check with tech, because we're having a bit of a problem with our intercoms, etc. Thank you.
Natalie's gone.
Oh, Natalie's gone. Brilliant. Thank you. So moving on. Item 2, declarations of interest. No, thank you. I will keep projecting and work through the blank spots. Item 3, exclusion of press and public. Officers have advised that information contained in Appendix 1 to Agenda Item 10, bus franchising, are treated as exempt under Paragraph 3 of Part 1 to Schedule because they contain information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the Combined Authority, and further that it is considered the public interest in maintaining the content of the appendices as exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information, as publication could prejudice current and future wish to discuss the content of the appendices when we consider item 10. We've scheduled it at the end of the meeting to help with the process. It's a substantial item, so I'm hoping we will have a good chunk of time to discuss it. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held 18th of September 25. Members, any further comments or questions? No, thank you all so much. And we're content. Moving on to the Mayor's update. I was deeply honoured to be invited by the Prime Minister to join him on his trade mission to Mumbai in India last week, alongside 125 business leaders from across the country. It was an incredible group of people, and it was a privilege to represent West Yorkshire. The mission helped to progress the UK-India free trade agreement signed earlier in the year, and helped us to solidify the strong trade links between our two nations. And I was also really pleased that there were 3 West Yorkshire businesses on that trade mission: Paxman Coolers, Brandon Medical and Group Roads, all of flying the flag for trade and investment into West Yorkshire. I also joined the Prime Minister's visit to Yash Raj Film Studios, which I'd also visited on my trip to Mumbai 3 years ago to discuss the prospect of bringing Bollywood production to the UK. So I'm really thrilled the studios have been able to commit to filming 3 new films over here in the coming years. I am making a very strong case that they come here to West Yorkshire. I also spoke at the Global FinTech Fest 2025, hundreds of thousands, it seems, of delegates, later addressed by Keir Starmer and Narendra Modi. I was able at that panel to champion the development of the Northern Square Mile here in Leeds, and highlighted the opportunities for Indian tech firms to locate in West Yorkshire to access UK and European markets. And the government announced a series of investments into the UK as part of the mission, including, I'm pleased to say, some in West Yorkshire. Mastec has confirmed £2 million worth of investment to upgrade the Leeds office, creating 200 jobs. And Algorithm Software announced a £5 million investment in a new office in Leeds, creating 53 jobs. All of this bodes really well for the Great North Trade Mission, which involves all the North's mayors going to India in the autumn next year, planned, as I say, for the autumn. And at the end of last month, it was confirmed that West Yorkshire will receive 25 million over the next 3 years from the Creative Industries Growth Fund, which will help turbocharge the growth of the sector in our region, including contributions to One Creative North that we have been leading on. A real vote of confidence in our plans, and I look forward to sharing details of how the funding will help us to deliver on our cluster plans over the next few months. And finally, a few weeks ago, I was so delighted to speak at the launch of the Turner Prize 2025 at the Cartwright Hall Art Gallery in Bradford, alongside Councillor Susan Hinchcliffe, the leader of Bradford Council. It's the first time the prize has come to our region, and what a proud moment for Bradford City of Culture 2025. Powerful works by 4 outstanding artists, Nena Kalu, Rini Matik, Mohammed Sami and Zaidi Zah, and runs until the 22nd of February 2026. A brilliant opportunity for the people of West Yorkshire to experience world-class contemporary art right on our doorstep. If you haven't been, you must go. It was incredible. So, enough from me. Let's progress with the rest of the meeting. Please, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. I think my invite to Mumbai got lost in the post. So I was hoping you might be able to provide an update on the White Rose rail station. So we were supposed to have something in July and didn't, and there was nothing in September, nothing today. So I'm hoping perhaps you can commit that we can have an update for the next board meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. I can't tell you how frustrated I am. The public are frustrated, I'm frustrated, you're frustrated. But I just want to reassure the Combined Authority, we are using every lever, every bit of effort to get to a point where we can go to the next steps. And I can commit to the next meeting, we will have more information for you. But I share your frustration. Transport is the key to growth in our region, and it's going to be an amazing station, and the public of West Yorkshire deserve that station. So I'm hoping that we can get rid of those blockages. Councillor Morley.
Yes, Mayor, I just want to say a massive thank you to you and all the officers for your support in the naming of the Rob Burrows train a couple of weeks ago when it was unveiled in Castleford, to see his family there and his children. It was a fantastic event and a great honour for Rob, and I know it's something yourself and officers and other members of the Combined Authority have taken up, and I think it's just a really fitting tribute, and it was a fantastic day, so thank you for your support on that.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor, because it was quite a moment, wasn't it? It was also his birthday. And it was really pleasing to see Yvette, the MP, there as well. She'd come back from New York specially and was saying to her team, I cannot miss this moment, it's so important to all of us. And thanks to Northern as well. And it's a great design. And inside the train, there is also a timeline of Rob's achievements, which is always very humbling. And what an extremely powerful moment it was, and what courage he showed. And for those that may not have seen at Labour Party conference, I also used his quote to galvanise all of us, whatever political party we are, to lean more into ambition and optimism. So thank you for that, Councillor Morley. Also, very quickly, just to say, on the 26th of October, we have a Reclaim the Night march across the whole of our region. So please do look out for that in your emails, etc. So that's the end of the town hall comments, but I'm very grateful that you raised that. Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Councillor Lamb. Rest assured, we are on it. Okay, so moving on to project approvals, cross-cutting approvals, and this is item 6. The first item is proposing £750,000 extension to my cost of living emergency fund, extending the delivery timeframe to April 2027. The scheme's had an incredible impact so far and will continue to do so over the course of the next year, helping people in our region who need the most help at these challenging times. The biggest success from the previous round has been in support of benefit, advice and guidance, putting more money into people's pockets, often through the local Citizens Advice Bureau, and really impactful. And I know our local authority partners intend to continue with that support. The fund generated £2 of impact for every £1 spent, a clear demonstration of how targeted funding can make a real difference to communities. I'm delighted we are able to extend the programme. Can I invite Sarah Eaton, our Director of Strategy, Communication and Intelligence, to take us through the recommendations, please? Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. And as you've just rightly pointed out, this is an extension into April 2027. And an extension in funding of £750,000. So I think for an additional, so it's targeting an additional 5,400 beneficiaries. The previous programme had some really successful outcomes as part of the independent evaluation programme that took part, and we actually targeted or touched around 61,000 people through that funding. So the value for money impact of investing that resource in communities has been kind of well received. So I think essentially what we're looking to today is to get that extension into April 2027. It's not running as long as the previous scheme. I think that's predominantly because we need to make sure that this fund continues to kind of be responsive and reflective, and also kind of linking to all the work that we're taking place, particularly around work and health. And other activity that colleagues in local authorities are delivering. The money will be provided directly to local authorities, who will then enter into agreements with the voluntary community sector in their particular patch. So lots of outputs from that particular work, not only for the individuals within the schemes, but also the voluntary community sector as well, who've kind of benefited ultimately from that resource. So I'll stop speaking there, but obviously a really important scheme in terms of investing in local people.
Thank you. And I think the numbers speak for themselves, that the change will allow the scheme to support an additional 5,400 beneficiaries, targeting workless households and individuals experiencing in-work poverty. And I'm hoping that our Healthy Working Life programme can also then lean into that cohort of people who are struggling, to support them to get well and to get into a position where they're ready to look for work. Thank you so much. Any comments? Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Happy to support the paper, and my only question is that I appreciate we're trying to make the report briefer, which is welcome, but in this instance it would be useful outside the meeting just to get a bit more detail and some figures and numbers about what's worked well and what hasn't, because if things are working well, my view is let's do more of it.
Thank you, and I just want to thank my local authority partners for this, because they know their communities better than we will ever know them, and the outcomes have been very impressive. And I think it was almost double the amount of people we thought we'd reach in the first cohort. So I want to thank everybody at local authority level for their commitment to, particularly around CAB and benefits advice and mental health support. So thank you. With that, this is Nikki's first meeting, and she's asked me to sharpen up how we make and record decisions at these meetings. So I'll be asking for a show of hands for those in favour, for those abstaining, and for those voting against the recommendations we're bringing forward. So on each item in this combined authority meeting, we will be going through that process. So I think we've had a general consensus historically, which is perfectly legitimate, but I think Nikki has brought rigour from Leeds. So we are going to be able to then record how people vote. Whilst we do know that Councillor Lamb voted against bus franchising, we do know that, we will be able to have more clarity about who does what. So thank you so much. Right, so with the recommendations, we approve the change request to increase funding for the Mayor's Cost of Living Emergency Fund by 750,000 to 3.75 million and extend delivery to April 2027. We delegate the authority to the Chief Executive to enter into addendums to existing funding agreements with partner councils. We approve future decisions follow the assurance pathway and tolerances outlined in the report, and note that no programme level risk or contingency allowance has been established for this scheme. Can those in favour of the recommendations please raise your hand? In favour? Thank you. In favour. Do I vote as well? I vote as well, yes. Thank you very much, Nikki. Thank you very much, everyone. Those against? For all those abstaining? Thank you. Brilliant. Moving on to project 6B, project approvals, investment priority 1, good jobs and resilient businesses. The next item on the agenda is a bit of a complicated one and relates to a previous broadband infrastructure programme that predated my mayoralty. With that in mind, can I turn to Felix Kumeyampofo, our Director of Inclusive Economy, Skills and Culture, to take us through the recommendations, please. Felix.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. As the Mayor said, this is about a project. Confusingly, we refer to this also as gain share, but it's not the gain share that we usually talk about. This is about broadband dividend on the back of investment that was made a few years ago. Earlier this year, we came to you for a decision which you were happy to give us for us to be able to redeploy some of the money that has accrued back to our local authority partners across West Yorkshire and York to make up for funding investment that they made at the beginning of this process. You were happy to give us that approval. Unfortunately, going through the documentation, it became clear that we should have clarified at the time that the funding can only be used for digital capital expenditure. So we've come back. The intention is still the same. Funding will be deployed across our local authorities, but we need to just make sure it's used for the purpose that it was set out at the outset. There is always, as ever with these things, a risk of clawback. We expect that we believe this is a very low risk, but there's always that risk, and so we just need to make sure the funding is used appropriately as the accountable body for this. So that's why we've brought this back, just to clarify the decision that was made. The intention remains the same.
Thank you. Councillor Scullion.
Thank you. Important, really, that we hang on to the money that we do get distributed to us and that we don't face the possibility of clawback. I just wanted to say that I'm very strongly in favour of investment in our digital infrastructure. I think it's as important as our highways. We spend a lot of time talking about potholes, but actually we need to be modern and talk about the digital infrastructure. In a place like Calderdale, semi-rural, in terms of businesses that people want to start up and they find themselves constrained because of uploading speeds in particular. And I've used this example before. Somebody with a business involving Japanese, learning Japanese, has to walk to the next village in order to find a place with the upload speeds he needs to run his international business. Now, Japanese learning and Calderdale are not words to use in the same sentence very often. But actually, if we want to be globally connected, then we have to have that kind of digital infrastructure. So yes, really welcome this. And actually, when we're talking about investment for the future, let's make sure that we give digital infrastructure as much attention as some of the other things.
Thank you, Councillor Scullion. And we do have a lot of Japanese tourists that come to Halifax. So there are connections there. But I would also say we have a very good news story to tell about West Yorkshire with our digital speeds and our digital connectivity. But it has to reach everywhere. If you want, did you want to come back on that, Felix? No? Yes, Councillor Kilbane.
And as a non-voting member of this body, and with it reaching everywhere, I bring thanks from York. I think this is a really good example of how the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, and what we can all achieve together. I know there's a review going on of Lot 8. Very happy to contribute to that review, but this really is making a difference on the ground where it matters. So thanks again from York.
Thank you. In our White Rose agreement with the Mayor of York and North Yorkshire, we do work very closely together. So your connectivity is also our connectivity. So I'm pleased to hear that. Okay, so with the recommendation, are the Combined Authority happy to approve the delegation to the Chief Executive to authorise the use of 6.3 million broadband gain share fund for capital investment in digital infrastructure? Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Abstaining? Thank you so much. Moving on. Item 6C, this is now the item relating to our Brownfield Housing Fund programme and our continued investment in bringing forward new development in our region. The additional funding we've received from government will help us unlock even more homes on those unused sites. And this update includes a change to Bradford City Village Phase 1 business case. It's going to help us ensure the funding agreement can be finalised and the scheme can move forward. Can I invite Councillor Matthew Morley to speak to the proposals, then Liz Hunter, our Director of Policing, Environment and Place, to take us through the recommendations. Councillor Morley.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Really happy to introduce this report. I mean, the Bradford City Village Phase 1 is going to be a fantastic transformer scheme for Bradford, so really pleased with this. So can I please pass over to Liz, who will take us through the report. Thank you.
Thank you. And also to say, before Liz comes in, that Bradford has recently won a couple of awards for your city centre regeneration, so congratulations to Bradford. Liz.
Thank you. So as you've already pointed out, Mayor, for the Brownfield Housing Fund, this is welcome additional funding. So this is a change request to the programme to accept the funding into the programme and also to extend the delivery timetable to March 2029. In terms of Bradford City Village, we've brought before you the different phases. This is a kind of minor technical change really to enable us to enter into a grant funding agreement, potentially with a different organisation, potentially the registered provider instead of ECF. So that gives us that flexibility as we work through the detail, if you're minded to give us that delegation today. And then thirdly, in part of this paper, there's also the National Poetry Centre, which, as the board will remember, we supported the National Poetry Centre putting in a funding ask to government of £5 million, and we were gratefully, it was great that we then had that confirmed, and we've been working with the National Poetry Centre to bring forward the business case that you see in front of you today. This is to unlock some of the early phase development funding in order for us to progress to the next stage in the decision points, and so it's enabling us to then pass that over to the National Poetry Centre to carry on the development work and moving from REBA Stage 1 onwards. So those are the three recommendations for this paper, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, any comments on those? Yes, Councillor Lamb.
Sorry, it's been very pedantic, but there are quite a lot of mistakes through through the whole agenda pack today. Clerical errors. I'll still be supporting the paper, but for example, on 3.14, when it gives us a link to click more details of the scheme for the Bradford City Village, it takes us to the National Poetry Centre, and there are quite a number of spelling mistakes through the paper as well. So just to flag that up.
Thank you, and certainly your diligence is very welcome. Thank you, and we will feed that back. We try very hard to move at speed with these papers, so occasionally errors will occur, but I'm sure my colleagues will be hanging their heads in shame that there were spelling errors when we have spell check on computers, but thank you and apologies for that. Okay, so let's move on to the approvals. Can we approve the increase of Brownfield Housing Programme funding by £21,043,998 from £89,038,292 to £110,082,290, extend the delivery timescales to the 31st of March 2029, and note that future business cases will be presented for project approvals and funding agreements. Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Those against? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. And now moving on to approval for a change to the Bradford City Village Phase 1 outline business case to delegate authority to the Chief Executive to amend the grant funding agreement entity name if required, and note continued approval in principle for up to £30,166,409 from the Brownfield Housing Fund, subject to conditions agreed on the 3rd of April 2025. Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. And thirdly, approve progression of the National Poetry Centre scheme to decision point 2 and commencement of outline business case work approved to £367,436 in development funding and entry into a funding agreement, approve future approvals via the assurance pathway subject to tolerances, and note potential CA funding of £5 million with an estimated total scheme cost of £22,643,595. Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you, Councillor Holdsworth. And I hope that the campaign group or the organisation for the National Poetry Centre will be delighted watching this and maybe will send us a poem of thanks. So thank you. Moving on to item 6D. The next project approval relates to an extension of our Renewable Grants Fund as we continue to provide local solutions to reduce carbon emissions and improve energy resilience. Some really brilliant projects have come forward so far, and there are many, many more in the pipeline. Can I ask Councillor Scullion, as Chair of the Climate, Energy and Environment Committee, to speak to the report, and then to Liz Hunter, our Director of Policing, Environment and Place, to take us through the recommendations. Councillor Scullion.
Thank you, Mayor. Haven't got very much to say. Welcome this funding from DESNES. Departments have got very long names these days, actually. And Great British Energy Scheme for renewable power energy generation. And the key thing here, I think, is about us getting our houses in order, really, in terms of councils. That, you know, we haven't quite, I don't think, got steam boilers, but in some ways, with some of this work, we're actually moving from the 19th century, jumping straight into the 21st century in terms of getting our own house in order. And actually, it is planned that it will cut costs, particularly once we stop having the link with gas prices. So it's about future-proofing our buildings, getting our own house in order, and actually setting an example. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, anybody like to comment on this? Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just around the battery energy storage facilities, and we find that frequently ourselves in a position where policies and agendas are at conflict with each other, and this is one of them, where we absolutely need more of this capacity, but I'm sure I'm not alone I know I'm not alone. Councillor Lewis in a similar position in his part of the city, where they're coming up in places we really don't want them, on greenfield sites, and as much as we need them, they need to be in the right place. So my suggestion is we insert a line in here that there would be no money from the combined authority that would support battery energy storage or solar panels on what is currently green belt or grey belt sites.
My instinct is we can't do that, but thank you, Nikki.
I think that would be really difficult. You know, there's a developing case law around this market and development of battery storage. Leeds has faced this themselves as well. I think the policy position needs to be developed locally from planning before the combined authority can confirm that position as part of a recommendation here.
Thank you, Liz.
Please can I just provide a reassurance on this particular fund. So each of the schemes that have come forward via the local authority. So just to provide that assurance that they have come from each of the places that you represent, and that's what we've put forward in this. So again, for the clarity of this particular fund, I just wanted to add that.
That's incredibly helpful, giving us clarity. Thank you. Okie doke. So can the combined authority approve the change request to increase funding for the Mayoral Renewables Fund grant scheme by 1.38 million and delegate authority to the Chief Executive to enter into funding agreements with partner councils subject to government approval? Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Those abstaining? Great. Okay, let's move on. Item 6E, these are project approvals relating to transport and an update on two schemes in particular, Armley Gyratory and the Dewsbury-Cleckheaton Sustainable Travel Corridor. Could I ask Councillor Susan Hinchcliffe, as Chair of the Transport Committee, to speak to a report, and then I'll move on to Simon Pope, our Transport Capital Programme Director, to take us through the recommendation. And perhaps if Councillor Carol Patterson, Leader of Kirklees Council, would like to comment on the Dewsbury-Cleckheaton Sustainable Travel Corridor scheme. Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Yeah, just to say this is, you know, the scale of projects being delivered by the Combined Authority. This is an example of just 2 of them, but we were reflecting earlier how actually the Combined Authority has grown massively in the last few years just because of the increased funding that is coming through from government. So it's great that we can deliver schemes like this now, but obviously happy to defer to local members who are more attuned with these particular programmes.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. No, we're really pleased to see this. It contributes to active leisure travel as well as improving congestion and ensuring that buses will be able to move smoothly in that part of Kirklees. So really welcome this funding. Thank you.
Great stuff. And of course there is investment in Dewsbury bus station and branding with the Weaver network. So we're looking forward to that. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I'd just be grateful if someone can talk us through why the costs have increased for the Army Gyratory scheme, and it's becoming a recurring theme of papers coming to ask for more money for things that we've already approved. So what are we putting in place to be more robust in the initial estimates?
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. And this is a perfect segue to Simon to talk us through this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So members will be aware from previous meetings that the new way of managing the Transport Capital Programme that was agreed last year does require cost and programme certainty at full approval stage, with subsequent changes during delivery only considered in exceptional circumstances. Just to reassure members, we've got 37 schemes in delivery at the moment, totalling over £300 million under across all our main funding mechanisms, 92% of which are currently delivering within their agreed funding envelopes. But as you've picked up, Councillor Lamb, the 2 schemes we're seeking approval for today are requesting additional funding after full approval. So just to briefly summarise some of the circumstances, both in relation to the Armley scheme and the Kirklees scheme. So the Armley scheme is seeking additional £3.1 million, which is an equivalent 8% uplift on the original scheme cost. The scheme, members will be aware, has been recently completed and includes highway improvements, bus priority and replacement walking and cycling bridges at a key junction for traffic bypassing Leeds city centre. The cost increase in this instance primarily relates to ground contamination discovered during delivery that significantly exceeded that was budgeted for. Now, since extensive ground investigation works were undertaken by the promoter to inform the original cost estimate and an appropriate risk allowance, the level of contamination encountered is felt to be beyond the promoter's ability to anticipate. So therefore we are recommending approval in this instance on the grounds of exceptional circumstances encountered during delivery. In the case of the second scheme, the A638 Dewsbury Clackheaton corridor in Kirklees, that scheme is requesting a £1.8 million increase in funding, which is equivalent to an 11% uplift on the original approval. It's also proposed to reduce the scope of that scheme to avoid a greater cost increase of £6.8 million that would otherwise result if the scheme was to be delivered in full. For members' awareness, the scheme it's been constructed over 3 phases. It's currently in construction and includes improvements to the Spen Valley Greenway, on-highway bus priority and cycle facilities, and minor crossing and public realm improvements in Heckman Wyke and Clackheaton town centres. The cost increase in this instance results from a lack of maturity in scheme costings at full approval stage, impacting utility diversions, land acquisition, works delivery and risk quantification. Full approval of the scheme does predate the new approach to managing the capital programme and the increased scrutiny of costs that have since been applied in response. Kirklees Council has worked with the Combined Authority to reduce the scope of the scheme in order to limit the extent of cost escalation whilst continuing to deliver those outputs that provide the greatest contribution to scheme benefits. So it's therefore proposed to de-scope phase 3, which comprises the minor crossings and public realm works, whilst ensuring delivery of phases 1 and 2 in full. Since the majority of the benefits will still be realised, particularly for bus and cycle users, we're therefore recommending that the Combined Authority approves both the cost increase and the rescoping of the scheme in order to maximise the return on the investment to date, but does note that lessons have been learnt by both this promoter and indeed all partners to avoid similar issues arising in future.
Could you reassure us, Simon, that the lack of maturity, we have put things in place where we're not going to be here again. We've said time and again that projects need that robust evidence base about how much these projects are going to cost. So how can we make sure that this isn't something that keeps coming back?
Yes, indeed, Mayor. We now have a much more rigorous approach to scrutinising costs at full approval stage, and indeed won't be recommending anything for combined authority approval until we've assured ourselves that promoters have undertaken a robust exercise and are confident of being able to deliver for the costs that are quoted. I think these schemes, and indeed other schemes that have come for previous decisions, have predated that more rigorous approach, and therefore there is an element of some of these legacy issues being dealt with, hence the decisions today, but I'm confident that we can move forward in a more constructive manner.
Yes, Simon.
Thank you. Just to add to Simon's comments there, I think there are two further points that I just wanted to highlight to give members reassurance that we both see a better way forward and are really scrutinising this very tightly. So looking forwards, and of course later on the agenda we'll be talking about the devolution settlement with government, the establishment of an integrated long-term settlement. That will put us, and indeed other combined authority areas, in a much better position to be able to forward plan pipelines than some of the historic approaches that we saw over recent years of short-term funding competitions that can cause initiatives to have to be brought forward at a faster pace than we might necessarily advise. And then the second element is item 7 on the agenda, which of course is now a standing item that provides the portfolio summary, is there so as to ensure that we are transparently reporting back to the combined authority in terms of the impact on budgets of any decisions that have been taken.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 3 quick questions. Firstly, just for completeness, what would be the impact and implications of saying no? We've set the budget and that's it. 2, where does the money come from for this, and what schemes is it taken from? What could we have done instead? And the third bit is, all of these schemes always come with a contingency. I can never remember a time where the contingency got repaid because everything was tickety-boo and on schedule and delivered. So have there been any occasions where the contingency wasn't needed and was repaid?
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Holdsworth, and then maybe Simon, you come back on all the questions. Councillor Holdsworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it's a question about the Army Gyratory, where the excessive contaminated land was found that hadn't been discovered, presumably, with the contractor's survey or whoever they employed to survey the land. Are they not insured to cover problems like this? And my question really is, why should the combined authority have to cover the additional cost in total of dealing with the contaminated land? Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Mayor. So in terms of the first question from Councillor Lamb, the impact of saying no, I think in the case of the Army Gyratory scheme, that scheme has now been delivered, so those costs would need to be shouldered by the City Council. In the case of the Kirklees scheme, we're advised by partners there that they will be forced to de-scope more of the scheme, particularly in terms of elements that are targeting benefits for bus users, so there will be a further reduction in scope from that that's currently set out. In terms of where the funding comes from to cover the cost increases, it does depend on the funding mechanism that's been drawn upon. In the case of Army Gyratory, that's been drawn from the West Yorkshire Transport Fund. That doesn't include a programme level risk and contingency budget. So effectively that eats into the residual funding left yet to be fully allocated that's available for delivery of other schemes. In the case of the Kirklees scheme, that's been delivered through the Transforming Cities Fund. That does include a programme level risk and contingency pot for which we've notionally identified an allowance to be drawn from. So there's a degree of buffer or protection before the impacts of the schemes within that programme. There aren't any instances where risk and contingency budget has been repaid by scheme promoters, but that's certainly something we're looking to explore in more detail to get a better handle on how we're managing risk and contingency pots going forward, because you would hope that there would be opportunities to claw back in instances where that's applicable. In relation to Councillor Holdsworth's question on the Army Gyratory, so all of the suppliers involved have the appropriate insurance is in place. There aren't any products on the market at the moment that protect either scheme promoters or contractors from discovery of issues in excess of what is being budgeted for as part of risk budgets. I think the only insurances that would be applicable would if a supplier had acted negligently, and we don't believe that's the case in this instance.
That's very helpful information. Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Anderson.
Just briefly, it applies to all the reports today and the next one as well. We don't seem to be having a risk section in these reports. You've got a long number of other statutory sections over effects on equalities, etc., which I'm not against. But I think we should be starting to set out in these reports what the risks are so that people can understand. In some cases, you've explained that there is a risk, but that wasn't set out in the report. So, I mean, you've explained it clearly here. So every decision made here today has been made with the knowledge that you've given. But to the public outside, they've not seen any risks being set. And if something was to go wrong further down, people say, well, why didn't you bring it up to our attention in the first place? So it's not specific at this report. It's generally on them all, and also on the next report as well. We've not got a risk section in. I mean, Paul suffered the last time when I was querying about some of his costings on the bus franchising. I just think we need to start highlighting risks more clearly.
Thank you. Risk is in the business assessment, isn't it, Simon?
Yes, indeed. There is a little bit more detail in the business case summaries that are linked from the main papers, but we take your point, Councillor Anderson, and can ensure that it's teased out more centrally as part of the main paper itself.
Thank you. Okie doke. No further comments. So are we happy to approve the change request for the Armley Gyratory Scheme to increase funding by 3,148,000 to a total of 45,118,000 and enter into an addendum with Leeds City Council, including 341,000 ring-fenced for monitoring and evaluation, with future approvals subject to assurance tolerances? In favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Against? Abstaining? Thank you. Okay, approving the change request for the Dewsbury-Cleckheaton Sustainable Travel Corridor to de-scope Phase 3 and increase funding by 1,760,282 to a total of 17,560,259. Enter into an addendum with Kirklees Council, including 100,000 ring fence for monitoring and evaluation, with future approvals subject to assurance tolerances, and £2,892,165 assigned for risk and contingency. In favour of the recommendations? Against? And abstaining? Thank you. Moving on, thank you so much to the portfolio summary that Simon just mentioned. It's a report that gives us a clear picture of the funding landscape across our invested programmes. And can I invite Kate Taylor? Where are you, Kate? Oh, you're there at the end. Our Director of Finance and Commercial Services, to take us through the report. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report is for no decisions required, and is effectively a summary report summarising, as the Mayor set out, the position across our programmes. The most significant programme within there is the Transport Capital Programme, which is £2.5 billion multi-year programme, which is the largest area of funding being managed by the Combined Authority. We have made active decisions to over-programme both the Transport Fund and the Transforming Cities Fund in there, which, while wise decisions to make sure that we are able to maximise funding and not have to return funding back to central government, does highlight the need for prioritisation, careful prioritisation in the future. Currently, we have 69% of the West Yorkshire Transport Fund and 71% of the Transforming Cities Fund have been through this board and approved for projects with significant spend committed across both of those programmes. As Simon has just outlined previously, the Transport Fund does not have a dedicated contingency pot, which means that cost increases do further strain the budget and affect projects that can proceed. No further.
Thank you. And there's also the Active Travel Fund as well. There's a good list of funding streams in there. And it is quite something to see the complexity of funding streams. And I am looking forward to that integrated settlement moment where this may be a bit more straightforward for us. So are the Combined Authority, or any comments? Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, it's just a quick comment. I think it's really helpful to have this and grateful that it's here. It's a constructive comment. I hope that Eva, as someone who's used to looking at these reports, I suspect everyone around the table is, I found it a bit hard to navigate, and well, it's the first stab, very helpful, but just kind of putting a member of the public's layperson's hat on, it could just do with a bit of a presentational work for future iterations.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Kate.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, it's a report that has, I think, come in the last 3 months. We are working on that, and I think particularly as we move forward into integrated settlement and getting hopefully a more streamlined function and looking at things like graphics and ways. So accept that feedback and we can, well.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Is there anywhere that there is a list to look to see what schemes are left still to be funded? It talks about that there's 29%. Just pick it at random. There's 29% of the funding still available at 133. But what happens if you've got over provision? You've already got schemes that are worth, say, for example, 160 million to be funded. So is there anywhere that that information is recorded so that anybody who wants to see it can see whether or not there's over or under provision?
Kate? We absolutely do have a list of all of the schemes. I'm looking kind of up the table at Simon, because Simon has literally can list those off probably by scheme that sits there. Obviously, financially, you will be aware that I cannot allow schemes to proceed once we hit a certain limit. Legally, I cannot allow us to then enter into approvals for schemes without money that is in there. Simon wants to say anything.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, the original programme for each of the main funding mechanisms, I believe, was published on the Combined Authority's website, but I think we can certainly ensure that that's a little bit more transparent as part of this paper in future, so you can see the schemes yet to be brought to fruition.
Thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Just to make a point as well, that what I've learned over the years is if you have to work schemes up to deliverable quality, because invariably government finds money to push down to combined authorities, and then we have to be ready to go. And if you're not ready with schemes, then you can't take advantage of that. So I don't think it's quite a zero-sum game. It's not quite as straightforward as that. We all need to make sure we continue powering ahead with all our schemes, because there will be more money coming through with the enhanced devolution, and we do need to be ready to take advantage of that. So just to provide that context, I think, is what was said.
And that's why you see often we're talking about over-programming, because we need to be ready and prepared if governments say this is a new funding pot. Simon, did you want to come back?
You took the words out of my mouth, so yeah, there has been a tactical approach to over-programming to ensure that we are able to hit the ground running with shovel-ready schemes as funding opportunities arise.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Logic of it is just for public, it's what does the person outside. We all understand it, but what about the person outside? That's only just for transparency. I'm not critical of anything that anybody's doing here at all. It's just what happens if a member of the public wants to find out why Scheme A has been brought forward and why Scheme B has been suspended, albeit temporarily. We heard in the last item that they've had to adjust one of these schemes. So somebody there in that community might have been expecting something. Now they're not going to get it, so they need to understand why it's not coming forward. That's all I'm doing. It's not I'm complaining about the way we're doing things. It just make it more transparent.
It's a good point, well made. So thank you for that. We'll note that approach. Okay, so can we approve that we are noting the portfolio summary information outlined in the report? All in favour? Against? Abstaining? No, super, thank you. So moving on to devolution and the integrated settlement, we've just been discussing it. We've talked here about the importance of the English devolution bill to the future of our region and the importance of us becoming a mature and established strategic authority. The integrated settlement, which gives us greater flexibilities and freedoms over the resources we have, is going to be an absolute game changer for our region. And we're making a lot of progress with government and developing our outcomes framework, which will help drive that integrated settlement. Can I invite Sarah Eaton, our Director of Strategy, to take us through the recommendations? Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report, I think, is going to be a regular report on the agenda, particularly given the kind of work programme that is evolving. And I think particularly this quarter, as you'll see in the report, the focus is around kind of integrated settlement and the outcomes framework. What you'll see in the paper now is in the appendix is a programme plan which kind of sets out the key milestones that we're working towards. And obviously, I think just in terms of that programme, there are a number of other work streams which, as they are coming on stream and we're developing work, we'll be fetching updates to the Combined Authority so that you're aware of kind of how we're progressing with some of that activity. I think for this period, I think just to give a little bit more information, we were hoping, particularly around the funding scope and quantum, that we might have more details to share with you today around that particular item. We know that we'll get an interim kind of quantum information in October and the final information at the end of November. We've not had anything yet, and there's a little bit of slippage in that timetable, which means that we're going to have to kind of work a little bit harder towards the end of this period, particularly around matching the funds in scope of the quantum against the outcomes framework. And obviously the next report will hopefully be bringing a better update around what that actually means. There's been some slippage in the overall timetable as well. We were expecting that everything would be signed off by the end of the year, and we think that that's going to move into mid-January now. Although there'll be some mitigating actions in place, I think, from the government in terms of giving us some kind of assurance. And that is really important. As you'll see in the programme plan, there's a lot of alignment here with our business and budget planning. It's really critical, and Kate's looking at me across the room, how this kind of integrates and works well with the work that we're doing around the budget. And we're doing a lot of work, which is why that programme plan is there, to kind of look at the interdependencies of these particular activities. So just to give reassurance that we will be fetching more back on that kind of update soon. In terms of the readiness check, I gave a little bit of an update last time round. PwC have now been appointed as the government's kind of in that work. So between now and the end of the year, again, there's quite a lot of work to do to make sure that we're contributing to that. And again, that will report towards the end of the year in terms of that piece of work. And then finally, around the outcomes framework. So the outcomes framework, the Combined Authority is already developing its own outcomes framework, and this is really to ensure, based on feedback that we got, for example, on the Gateway Review, that we've got a really consistent set of measures which help us evaluate and monitor impact for the future. Really important. The government, as we've said previously, requires us to develop an integrated settlement outcomes framework, and that will be part of our wider outcomes framework. We are working with government on this piece of work, and we've submitted, as you'll see in the report, some high-level outcomes and some draft metrics to them in early October, not early September. And obviously, over this coming period, we've got a lot of work to do with them to refine those metrics. Now, it's important that we understand what the quantum is before we finalise the metrics. Obviously, what we don't want to do is signing up for something and then realising that there's no actual resource to kind of deliver. So there's quite a bit of work to do now between now and the end of the year to kind of develop this piece of work. Because of the timelines and because of some of the challenges around timing, I think the report is seeking some delegated authority to kind of negotiate with government over that period and to kind of do those iterated kind of submissions. So we're just seeking that delegated approval there. And then obviously the timeline there is set out in the paper so that colleagues can be aware and assured of kind of the work that we're doing to hit that kind of milestones moving forward. I think the next pieces of work will become more apparent as the devolution bill passes its way through Parliament, and obviously as soon as we get more information around that, we'll be bringing that to the Combined Authority. But I'll stop there, Mayor, and back to you.
Thank you, and it's a testimony to you and the team how quickly you've worked on this, because it's a massive piece of work, and my ask of you to be as ambitious as possible, and particularly around new burdens when it comes to the 7 competencies, you've really lent into that. So thank you to you and your team. And it's frustrating that there's been a slippage in time when everybody's been working towards particular deadlines. But just thanks. It's quite a seismic moment for us as an organisation. We want to get it right for the future. Any comments? Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's just a quick comment and a question. So I think where I have some criticism, I'm going to level it at the Treasury rather than the government of any particular colour, because you could have levelled exactly the same issues at the previous government as the current one. So I think it's the culture of the Treasury that's the issue, with asking the Combined Authority on this to work at great pace and then not giving them the information that they need to do it, which is the same for local authorities. Releasing budget figures just before Christmas and things like that is really not very helpful, and I note that representations have been made along those lines, so absolutely support that. On 3.14, it says we should have had an indicative quantum of funding by mid-October, so I think 16th of October is reasonable to say that's mid-October. So have we had that indicative quantum of funding?
So we're expecting some of that information this week. So obviously we've got another day or so to get that information. So there's still time to meet that deadline. But yeah, that will be an indicative kind of understanding. But it will give us some information that will help us kind of progress with some of the work on the outcomes framework. But the final one will be the end of November.
And I think both Greater Manchester and the West Midlands also were in the trenches with this as well when they got their integrated settlement about what is valuable, you know, what's in, what's out, how much a project's worth, etc., and responsibilities worth. So rest assured, we've been bold and ambitious in our ask of government, and we will continue to be so. Any further comments? No. Thank you so much again, Sarah, for the team's work. Thank you. So. Can we recommend that we note the progress on preparations for the English Devolution Community Empowerment Bill and Programme Plan Appendix 1, note the work underway to prepare for receipt and delivery of the integrated settlement from April 2026, and delegate to the Chief Executive in consultation with myself and Director of Strategy to submit further drafts and the final outcome framework to Government in line with the timetable. In favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Those against? Anyone abstaining? Thank you so much. Moving on, item 9, recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee for recommendation for adoption. As ever, thank you to the Scrutiny Committee for your work. And can I ask Councillor Barry Anderson, as Chair of the Scrutiny Committee, to speak to the report and take us through his recommendations, please. Thank you.
All I wanted to say is thank you for allowing us to bring it here today. Hopefully you've all had a chance to have a look through them, and if there's any questions and queries, quite happy to try and answer them. Not guaranteed I will be able to answer them, but I'll do my best, and would hope that we can get on with this and work with governance and audit as well.
Thank you. Any comments on the scrutiny paper? If I could hand over to Nikki, please, to advise of how we're handling these recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor. As the recommendations before you on the Appendix 1, they are advisory in nature, so you've got a range of options before you as the Combined Authority voting members. You can accept them in full, amend them or refuse them. If you do take options B and C, it would be legitimate for reasons to be provided to accompany those so that they can be returned to scrutiny.
Thank you. Our approach is that we are going to approve the recommendations, to accept them from the Scrutiny Committee. All those in favour of accepting these recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee? All those against? And anyone abstaining? Thank you. Thank you for your work, Councillor Anderson. And Nikki will be in touch with the next steps on this report. Thank you.
Can I just say as well, it's very unusual for me to win a vote.
Maybe switch parties, Councillor Anderson, but there we go. Right, moving on to the substantive item on the agenda, the bus franchising update. And it's so exciting to be at this point with our bus franchising journey and the delivery of our Weaver network. The report in front of us sets out the outlined business case for new bus procurement and the buses that will be the first to have the Weaver branding on the road. A major milestone, and thank you to all the officers for the detailed work that's gone into getting us to this point. And really important that the proposals include a public consultation to shape the final specification of the new fleet. As we know, we want to make sure the buses that we have are going to meet the needs of the people of West Yorkshire. Can I first invite Councillor Hinchcliffe, Chair of the Transport Committee, to comment on the report, and then hand over to Paul Matthews, our Director of Bus Franchising, to take us through the recommendations. Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, this is a decision you took some time ago now. There's huge amounts of work going on with this, and with a very changing marketplace in buses all the time as well. So we already have the Weaver brand, but of course it's more than just a brand, it's the buses and the network that goes behind it. So I'm just happy to pass over really to Simon or Paul.
Simon, thank you, and Paul. Paul.
Thank you, Catherine Hinchcliffe. Thank you, Mayor. So the paper is really in two parts. There is clearly a core paper, which I will talk to, and then there's more detail, which is the business case summary, which is in the appendix. It was a private appendix. Clearly, the papers are interlinked, but if there are detailed questions, then probably we'll need to take them in the private session. But thank you very much indeed. The Combined Authority approved the fleet strategy for bus franchising back in May. And within that paper, it contained a range of options as how we would go about making sure we had the right fleet for day one. And since that time, what we've been doing is working up our plans as to what the shape of that fleet would look like, really to do a number of things. One is to make sure we have the right fleet for day one, we have enough fleet for day one. Secondly, that it meets the entire fleet meets the specification that we have set out and determined in terms of higher standards, particularly around emissions and in terms of accessibility. And then thirdly, obviously working towards the zero emission goal, fleet goal that we have over time, and the resulting air quality improvements that will actually bring as well. What we've clearly been having to do when we've been working that up is be cognizant of the network strategy, which the authority approved last time, and also the lotting strategy. So lots of parts which work into another here. What we've resulted conclusion of that, it was that we do need to procure some new fleet of vehicles alongside other routes to make sure we hit those objectives. And in August, we did launch the first stage of a procurement tendering process for manufacturers, because we were very keen to ensure that manufacturing slots were booked at an early stage, given that there is a competitive market for manufacturers and lots of other authorities going down the same route. So the paper before you has a number of recommendations, really in two parts. One is around the business case, the outline business case, to release the deposit for the funding of new zero emission fleet, a substantial number. So one is that the case for funding new vehicles, and the second part of the paper, as the Mayor has outlined, is a request that the authority approves a public consultation in terms of bus design, because we believe that's very important that as part of the new Weaver brand, that customers do have the opportunity to shape the look and feel of the inside of the bus, particularly seeking the views of protected characteristic groups, which are very important to make sure we capture as well. So I'll stop there, I think, but obviously bear in mind the business case summary would be in the private paper.
Thank you so much, Paul. And it's such a great opportunity for us to get the buses that we deserve. And certainly, as I travel on buses, people tell me about the challenges they face with the buses that are already there, that some of them are old, you can't charge your phone, there's only space for a wheelchair or a buggy. So this is a chance for us to really set the standard for the people of West Yorkshire, because isn't it about time we had something that was fit for the 21st century? As we have some buses, we do have some, like the Flyer, we do have some electric buses already, but this is going to be really impactful on the fleet. Any comments? Yes, Councillor Lamb. It's turning into a one-man show, isn't it, today?
Well,
Councillor Lamb, over to you.
I'm only here to help. So if I can make my points in two parts, if I may. So the first one is around the design and the involvement of the public, and it picks up on your point about the experience that some people have. And I think it's one of the options we should be floating is to have a flexible fleet of buses, because the experience is different depending on where you are, depending on how frequent the buses are. So if I can give an example of Boston Spa in my part of the world, where the demographic is much older than normal, we've got we've got two special schools, so a lot of younger people with wheelchairs, mobility issues, quite a number of housing units for people with special needs and mobility issues, and the bus service is not very frequent. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I would like it to, but it's an hourly service at the moment. When the bus comes once an hour and someone in a wheelchair is waiting at the bus stop and there's already someone in the wheelchair space, the bus goes and they have to wait for the next one another hour. Or if there's a buggy there, if there are three people, as I see on a regular basis, they have to decide which one of them is going to get on the bus and fulfill their plans, and which two are going to go home and give up and try again another day. So my suggestion, we should have some flexible buses. So if the bus is coming every 10 minutes, it's still not ideal, but you can manage that. I appreciate it would be a lot more expensive to have buses that would have capacity, but perhaps fold down seats and things like that. And in certain locations, could we have, or at least look at the option of having some buses that could accommodate more for those places where there's less frequency and more need?
If I may say, Councillor Lamb, this is what franchising gives us, which is a good news story about being able to get the buses that serve our communities. And I'm hoping that you will be leading the campaign to feed in to the consultation on the buses that your community need and deserve. Thank you. Any further comments before we go into a private session? Councillor Lamb, you do have a second point.
I do have a second point. So absolutely, I'll be encouraging people to get involved in the consultation. And as you were keen to point out at the beginning, I did vote against franchising. So far, I still think that was the right decision, but I really genuinely hope that time will prove me wrong, and I will gladly come here and eat my humble pie when, if and when that time comes. However, having read a lot of these reports over my 19 years as a councillor, I've learned to read what the reports don't say. And what I'm seeing this report not say is the costs are going up. It's going to be a lot more expensive than we anticipated. One thing I understand is the new government have unexpectedly taken away the grant funding for electric buses, so it will cost us an extra £150,000 for each bus that we need to buy over the coming years. That's I'm not sure I can put the number on it without being in the private session. It's a lot. It's a big number, and the costs generally are going up. Now, I appreciate we've been told several times the work is being done and the financial position will be set out in due course. I accept that. What I think would be helpful, and it is important for the public to know, is what your position is on what your priorities would be, because there are only so many places the money can come from. Maybe government will have something to announce in the autumn. That would be lovely. If not, then fare payers will have to pay more, or council taxpayers will have to pay more, or you would have to introduce a mayoral precept, or you would have to cut services. I'm assuming the latter just isn't an option. We want services to be better. We all want that. So what would your priorities be if it's going to cost a lot more than we expect, as I suspect it is going to?
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. And as you know, transport is the key to growth in our community and is one of the most important things that we are dedicated to deliver. And as you will imagine, work is underway. But regarding the zebras, whilst we are always trying to get away from funding streams that are dedicated to one particular thing, this is now rolled into the Transport Fund. So we are looking at the budgets going forward, and I would encourage you to look at the previous decision we made many, many months ago around bus franchising, that we didn't have all the numbers because the bus companies were holding on to data. So we were making a decision knowing that some of the landscape was unknown. But rest assured, my priority is better buses for the people of West Yorkshire. Thank you so much. So if we could move into a private session, if we want to move on to the more specific data, I would encourage members of the public and press, if you don't mind, if you could please leave, and we will stop the live recording. Thank you so much. How dare you? Gentlemen, we're now about to go live. So if we could go back online, please. Okay, so we are now back live. Thank you all so much. So we are now going to take our recommendations together. So the Combined Authority has been asked to note the updates provided in the report, to delegate authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with myself to lead the consultation process, approve progression of the bus reform fleet provision scheme through decision point 3, the outline business case, and commencement of activity 4, full business case. Approve development funding of £85,007 to progress the scheme to decision point 4, increasing total development funding to £1,206,514, to approve release of £29,972,552 for delivery of round 1 bus fleet provision, increasing the total scheme approval to £31,179,070. Approve future scheme approvals in line with the assurance pathway and approval routes subject to tolerances outlined in the report, and to note the Combined Authority's potential funding commitment of up to £100 million for round 1 fleet provision. Wow, that is a lot and quite a moment. Can all those in favour of the recommendations please raise their hand? Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you all so much. As we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is just the minutes for information, and the minutes are for noting. Whew, thank you all, everyone, for attending and also for your lively contributions. And remind you the date of the next meeting, the 4th of December. There might even be mince pies. And I'd like to herewith close the meeting. Thank you.